The room was small, old, and warm in its own way. A quiet hush lived in the corners, as if the wooden walls themselves had grown weary of conversation over the decades. The faint smell of cedar and rice hung in the air, mingling with the cool touch of evening. Through the thin curtains, golden light poured gently across the tatami floor, painting long shadows that stretched toward the faded shelves. By the window sat the old woman. Her hair, white as snow fallen too early in autumn, was gathered in a loose bun that had loosened with the years. A shawl, patched and repatched by careful hands, wrapped her narrow shoulders. But it was her hands themselves, thin, wrinkled, trembling softly with the rhythm of age, that seemed to hold entire stories in their lines. On the floor, cross-legged, a little girl leaned against her grandmother's knee. Her cheek pressed lightly against the fabric of the shawl. Her small fingers toyed absent-mindedly with the frayed edge of the cloth. But her eyes, wide, dark, and unblinking, rested entirely on the old woman's face. "Oba-san?" the child whispered, her voice carrying that sacred hush only evening can create. "Tell me a story." The old woman's eyes shifted to her granddaughter. They were soft eyes, yet behind their softness lay a weight. The kind that comes not from years alone, but from what those years had carried. Her lips curved in the faintest of smiles. "A story," she echoed. Her voice cracked but steady, like a lullaby played on an old violin. "My story, perhaps." The girl nodded quickly. Oba-san looked away, toward the fading horizon through the window. Her gaze lingered on the soft orange sky, melting into deepening blue. The light reminded her of other evenings, long ago, when she was a girl herself. "My story," she began, "is not one of the princes or castles. It is not one you would find in books with bright pictures. It is the story of hunger, of walking barefoot through fields of dust, but also of love. Love that never left me, even when everything else did." The little girl blinked, her lips parting as though to ask a question, but no words came. Instead, she reached out and wrapped her tiny fingers around her grandmother's hand. The old woman's wrinkled fingers curled gently around hers, like roots holding fast to the earth. And in that tender silence, the air of the room shifted. Shadows deepened. The hum of the cicadas outside seemed to fade, and the golden light across the floor began to tremble, as if stirred by memory itself. The old woman closed her eyes, and with that, the room around them dissolved. In its place rose the wide fields of her childhood. Barefoot feet, thin arms, a girl with eyes like restless storms, a younger self. And the story began. The first thing that returned to her was the smell. Dry earth after weeks of heat. The kind of dust that clung to skin, to hair, to the back of the throat. She remembered the fields stretching endlessly, brown and brittle, waiting for rain that never came. She was only a girl then, no older than her granddaughter was now. Her feet were bare, her dress patched too many times to tell its original color. She ran along the ridges of the fields, her thin legs carrying her past rows of tired crops. The sun beat down mercilessly, making her eyes water. Her mother's voice called from the house, a small shape in the distance, its roof patched with straw. "Aiko!" The voice rang, carried by the hot wind. "Come help with the buckets!" Aiko. For that was the grandmother's name long ago. slowed her steps. She bent down, running her fingers through the dust at her feet. It lifted in a small cloud, as though even the earth itself was too tired to hold together, with a sigh too old for a girl of 8. She turned and ran back toward the house. Her mother stood by the well, her hands already red from pulling the heavy rope. The bucket groaned as it rose, half full, precious water sloshing against its wooden sides. Every drop was guarded, treasured more dearly than coins. "Here," her mother said, her voice firm but not unkind. "Carry this carefully to the basin." Aiko nodded, gripping the handle with both hands. The water was heavier than she expected, the bucket pulling her small arms downward as she staggered across the yard. But she did not spill it. She would not dare. Inside, her younger brother sat on the floor, coughing softly. His face was pale, his lips dry. Aiko's eyes flickered toward him as she set the bucket down. Something in her chest tightened. A child's worry, unnamed but heavy. That evening, they ate rice thinned with water, just enough to quiet the emptiness inside their stomachs. Her father did not speak much. He sat with his back straight, his face turned toward the small window as though waiting for something he could not name. Rain, perhaps, or hope. Iko lay awake that night, listening to her brother's breathing beside her. The moonlight spilled across the floor, silver and cold. She thought of school, of books she longed to hold but could not. For she was needed in the fields, not in the classroom. She thought of laughter she had once shared with friends. Laughter now replaced by long silences and longer days. She closed her eyes, and in her dreams she ran again. But this time the fields were green, and rain fell gently on her skin. Back in the dimly lit room of the present, the grandmother's voice trembled as she spoke. Her granddaughter's small hand still rested in hers, warm and alive. "Those were my first memories," Obasan whispered, the weight of a bucket heavier than my arms, the sound of my brother's cough, the silence of a house that wanted rain. The little girl tilted her head, her eyes wide. "Were you sad, Obasan?" The old woman's lips curved into something between a smile and a sigh. "I did not know sadness then, not the way you do when you are older. I only knew hunger and work and the sound of my mother's tired voice. Sadness came later." The girl pressed closer against her side, as if her small warmth could guard against the shadows gathering in her grandmother's voice. Obasan looked again to the window. The light had faded further, the sky deepening to indigo. A single star had appeared, fragile and faint. "That," she said, her eyes lost in memory, "was the beginning of my journey. The first chapter of a life that would take more than it gave, but still left me with enough to hold on." The summer stretched long, cruel and unbroken. Days blurred into each other. Sun blazing, buckets groaning, fields sighing with thirst. The earth cracked beneath Aiko's bare feet, lines like veins splitting across the soil. She learned to walk lightly, to carry water with steady hands, to swallow her hunger quietly so her younger brother might eat a little more. But no matter how carefully she tried, she could not protect him. Her brother's cough deepened. At first it came only at night, a soft rasp that Aiko thought might fade like the cicadas when autumn came. But it grew louder, harsher, until it shook his whole thin body. His eyes lost their shine. His lips cracked. He would sit on the floor. His arms wrapped around himself, trembling even in the heat. Iko would sit beside him, pressing her small hand against his back. "It's okay," she would whisper, though her voice wavered. "I'll fetch water for you. I'll make you stronger." She believed her words, because to doubt them was unbearable. Their mother tried remedies, boiled herbs, damp cloths for his forehead, lullabies sung with a voice that quivered like a breaking thread. Their father worked longer in the fields, silent and hard, his hands raw from the plough, as if more hours might barter with fate. But fate does not bargain. One morning, before the cicadas began their cry, Aiko woke to stillness. She reached for her brother, her fingers brushing his shoulder. Cold. Too cold. She shook him, whispering his name, then saying it louder, then screaming it until her throat burned. Her parents rushed in, their faces pale as ghosts in the dim light. Her mother collapsed beside the boy, pulling him into her arms, though his small body no longer clung back. Her father stood frozen, his fists trembling at his sides, his face carved with a silence deeper than words. Aiko did not understand, not fully. She only knew her brother would not cough anymore, would not laugh softly as he once had when she made silly faces to cheer him. She buried her face in his still chest, her tears soaking into the thin fabric of his shirt. The funeral was simple, quiet. Neighbors came with bowed heads, murmuring words that dissolved in the air. Aiko watched the small bundle lowered into the earth, her hands clutching her mother's sleeve so tightly the fabric nearly tore. She wanted to cry out, to demand he come back, but her voice had gone hollow inside her. That night, she lay awake again under the silver moonlight, but the space beside her was empty now. The silence pressed against her chest, heavier than any bucket she had ever carried. She whispered into the dark, as if her brother might still hear. "I'll remember you. I promise. I'll live enough for both of us." And though she was only a child, something inside her hardened that night, like iron placed in fire. In the present, Obasan's voice faltered. Her eyes glistened, though no tears fell. The years had dried them long ago. Her granddaughter clutched her hand tightly, sensing the weight in the silence that followed. "Did it hurt very much?" the girl asked, her own eyes shimmering. Obasan turned to her, her lips trembling into a faint smile. "It hurt in a way words cannot tell. It was the first time I learned that love can be taken from you without warning, that the world does not wait for your heart to be ready." The child pressed her face into her grandmother's shawl, muffling a quiet sniffle. Obasan stroked her hair gently with her trembling amdad, her voice soft as a lullaby. "But it was also the first time I learnt this," she whispered. "That when someone, is taken from us, they are not gone entirely. They live in the way we remember them, in the promises we keep, in the love we carry forward." The little Tzlughat all raised her head, her small face determined. "I'll remember him too, Obasan, even though I never knew him."